this very timely and important conference. This event is jointly organized and hosted by the European Economic and Social Committee. It is a part of events in several continents that the International Labour Organization is co-organizing, and will be broadcast on the 20th of February to celebrate social justice and the Global Coalition for Social Justice. The Global Coalition was initiated by Director-General Gilbert Houngbo and founded by the ILO in 2023. It is joined now by the EESC, the European Commission, on behalf of the European Union, as well as many governments and organizations which are here today. The coalition's more than 330 partners seeks to tackle the challenges to social justice and to offer a platform for dialogue and opportunities to establish and foster concrete multi-stakeholder actions and solutions. Now, it is my pleasure to give the floor for her introductory remarks to Cinzia Del Rio. Cinzia is President of the Section for Employment, Social Affairs and Citizenship of the European Economic and Social Committee. Cinzia, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Shada, and welcome to everybody, and thanks for your participation to this event. As Shada said, we agreed to exchange views and focus our event on the impact of artificial intelligence in the world of work and in the society. Therefore, great opportunities and also challenges to address. I would like to highlight three aspects for our discussion. We all agree with a human-centered approach, but the challenge is how to enforce compliance with the human-in-control principle in decision-making processes in workplaces and in society. Second, workers' and citizens' rights change with the use of high technology in workplaces, but also in the delivery of services. The third point I would like to highlight is on the need of a participatory approach in the decision-making processes, which depend on algorithmic management, actively involving several actors in the design and implementation of AI systems. Social dialogue and collective bargaining are key to anticipate and regulate changes, but they are fragmented among countries. How can we ensure social cohesion and social justice and make it possible for technology to be used for the benefit of all? The debate is around a common regulatory framework, if needed, in order to direct innovation, not limiting it, and making it available to citizens in a fair and inclusive manner. I wish you all a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
And now it's my great pleasure to give the floor to Oliver Röpke, President of the European Economic and Social Committee, to take the floor to open the event.
Once again, it's really a big day for our committee that we are gathering here together to discuss artificial intelligence and the way forward. And it's really a great pleasure for me to open this event, which is organized jointly by the EESC and its SOC section and the International Labour Organization. I extend a warm welcome to all of you here at the EESC. And I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the ILO Director-General Gilbert Houngbo for launching the Global Coalition for Social Justice and for inviting the EESC to be an active part of this transformative initiative. The EESC has joined, as one of the first institutions, this important global call. So this event today is a great opportunity for the EESC to underscore the significance of the coalition and to reaffirm our steadfast commitment to championing social justice in the EU and beyond. Advancing social justice in today's world is deeply intertwined with the ethical development and application of artificial intelligence. AI technologies hold enormous potential to enhance competitiveness, drive productivity and promote inclusion. However, they also carry the risk of exacerbating inequalities if not thoughtfully and responsibly designed. The impact of AI depends on how wisely and ethically we choose to shape it. Some days ago at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, the World Economic Forum itself pointed to the fact that the AI revolution is more disruptive to the labour market than many of the technologies that came before it, and further disruptions continue to be expected in the near future. We know that blue-collar jobs have long been impacted by automation, but now 60% of the white-collar workers fear that AI will make their jobs redundant. And the World Economic Forum estimates nearly a quarter of all jobs globally will change in the next 5 years, with a structural job growth of 69 million jobs and a decline of 83 million jobs. So this corresponds to a net decrease of 14 million jobs, or 2% of current employment. And we have to discuss how to manage this process. We need to make sure that AI expands access and equity in the labour market. It must also enrich innovation by incorporating a wide range of perspectives and experiences. AI has a great potential to promote inclusion, but algorithms are only as unbiased as the data they are based on. If we are not careful regarding AI implementation, these technologies can also reinforce all kinds of stereotypes, sexism and discrimination in the labour market. Having said this, once again, thank you very much and wish you all a fruitful afternoon. Thanks a lot.
Now, to start the panel, let me first go to Agnieszka Dziemianowicz-Bąk, Minister for Family, Labour and Social Policy of Poland. The question is for you. What is your government doing and what do you think is worth sharing with the audience here? Please. Yes.
Thank you. So once again, thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure for me to be here in Brussels and discussing such an important topic. As you probably know, we are now 1 month in Polish presidency in EU. So that's even more important for me to have this opportunity to discuss with you the topic that is one of our priorities as Polish presidency.
Priorities are fighting discrimination, exclusion, or we want to develop all possibilities to choose equal employment. We all realize that new technologies, including AI, may lead to big opportunities, but also big threats for workers and everyone who works in the area of employment. So to evaluate how technology and AI affect employment, we already have to see how it is implemented at the workplace and how regulations on technology are adopted in national and international law. So in this context, while we're preparing for a controlled, smooth transition instead of violent revolution, questions around social dialogue, enhancing workers' representation are key. We need to have policy to develop social dialogue. We need social policy that will boost the role of traditional trade unions or other workers' organizations. All this will make it possible to avoid the risks such as mass layoffs or excessive control over privacy of workers or insufficient transparency about setting the rules at work or to evaluate people at work or to let algorithms evaluate people. We have fragmentation in at work. We have more and more remote work. People have less and less contacts between employers and employees. So it weakens traditional forms of how workers organize themselves and how law is developed and implemented. So national decision makers must get interested. They have to put people at the center. So at national levels and the international level, we need to try to boost social dialogue, to bring more members into trade unions, to strengthen workers' organizations, using digital technology as well. May help use all the chances, opportunities coming from technology. By this, I mean that we can use new technology to fight discrimination, gender-based discrimination. We can also involve people with disabilities. Digital technologies, AI as well, can help diagnose what is needed on the labor market, so the market becomes more friendly to people who were excluded before. This can help people support these workers on a daily basis. So we're facing a digital transformation, but there's also another transformation happening, the so-called silver transformation due to demographic changes. So we need to support older people, help them remain active using digital technology. And maybe it can also help to see what these people need when the market changes. That's another opportunity that we should not forget about. It will not be possible to use it without everyone involved, all social partners involved in creating new legislation, but not just legislation. We need the entire system to protect workers' welfare in this new digital era. So we need social dialogue and social partners involved. That should be the first step.
Let me turn now to Yolanda Diaz, the second Vice President from Spain, Minister of Labour and Social Economy. Please, Ms. Diaz.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the EESC and the ILO, because this is one of the conferences that I think is the most interesting in the world we're living in. We need to guarantee one of the key parts of this debate, which is to adapt this new assistive model of AI, and it's key that we keep our human and labor rights. That is the crux of the issue today. You will agree with me that it should be evident that there are some very difficult jobs. It all depends on what we do at this point in history, how we use artificial intelligence, and of course, how we use it for the digital economy. And as we've done in my country, Spain, we need to also focus on labor law. In Spain, we had one of the few existing laws in the world, the so-called rider law, which allows us to guarantee this. A large multinational company rebelled, if I may say, trying to not apply the law. But very clearly, we showed that it was possible not only for the law to exist, but for all major companies to follow the law and apply it. And that is what we need to do. We need to break through our fears of technology taking over our jobs. All of these reports saying we're going to lose millions of jobs, when the reality is we are creating another several tens of thousands of jobs with added value that are very important for society. But as Agnieszka said, we need to change a few things. And when we change things, we need to see how. If we speak about digitalization, we need to focus on democracy, inequality, and the climate crisis. Because generating data has a very large impact on the climate, a very large consumption of water, and all this data uses up a lot of energy. We can't just focus on social dialogue. Of course, social dialogue is a perfect way to bring democracy to labor relations, but we need to go one step further. Unions and social activists in Europe and throughout the world need to be part of the specific negotiations on the use of these mathematic algorithms and subscriptions that affect people's lives. And this requires efforts, requires training for the unions so that they are prepared for a collective bargaining that needs to look at the digital situation in the world. And I think this is the main pillar that we need to focus on. Of course, we want to uphold social dialogue, but not just in and of itself. As we've seen in Spain, in collective bargaining, we need to focus on the use of algorithms and everything it entails. Many negotiators tell us that they don't even know what the algorithm that they use does or how it can be biased when it comes to labor relations, and this is not democratic. So we need to change a few things which are vital. So let's do away with this talk of dystopia or being against technology. We need to uphold the rights of workers throughout the world. This is what we need to do. We already have enough dystopia going around, but we need to take concrete steps in a different direction. And I think that there is a lot to be done. For example, unions need to be part of the design and use of algorithms, as well as the digital rights of workers, self-employed individuals. This is key. There need to be algorithm authorities within companies so they know what the bias is that the algorithm is causing. This is vital for democracy. And I'll finish by pointing out something that I think is very important. Since we're here in Brussels, Europe needs to stop putting its head in the sand about technology. We need to show leadership in the world. We need to show a new social contract that is based on technology and digitalization. In the 21st century, there are many topics we need to include. Technological capitalism has a few traits. For example, it's held in very few hands. Now, of course, there's the added value of intellectual property and data. This is a very important part of technological capitalism. The weakening of the state. The strategies of 5 big multinational companies who own our data about our private lives, our companies, and our labor relations, what they seek with this strategy of weakening the public sector or the state is to make it difficult to regulate the digital economy. Look, within the EU, we've often spoken about how difficult it is to legislate democratically so that the power of these 5 multinationals don't overpower nation states or the EU.
Now I'll give the floor to Niki Karameas, Minister of Labour and Social Security of Greece. Of course, Ms. Karameas, you're also part of the EESC High-Level Forum on Enlargement. So we're very happy to have you here. And the question for you is basically also about how your government is helping in the transitioning of workers, particularly through education, skilling, and social protection programs. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I want to start off by thanking very warmly the EESC and the ILO for the invitation to be here among such a great panel, and to talk about a topic that I think is heavily discussed in all our member states. I would start off, first of all, with a very optimistic note, in the sense that I think that the rapid progress of AI in the recent years has been truly remarkable. It is already transforming our daily lives in ways that we may not have yet fully perceived. As far as the labor market is concerned, I think there's no doubt that this evolution presents both opportunities but also great challenges which have to be tackled. And following up on what was said earlier, it is of prime importance to align this technological revolution with social justice. What percentage of EU companies actually uses AI today? 13%. That's it. 13.5%, based on the data I recently saw, uses AI in Europe. Of course, that being said, the evolution is expected to be really rapid. But that's the state today. Now, going to digital skills, if we look at the EU as a whole, what percentage of EU population possesses basic digital skills? 55%. 55%. And the target is for us to reach 80% by 2030. We have a long way to go in order to protect workers, protect our citizens in acquiring basic digital skills. In Greece, the number of employees in the computer programming sector has risen by 83% in the last just few years. So we're talking about a drastic, I would say, increase. In Greece, we're following a two-pronged approach. What are we doing in order to protect our workers? We're doing two things. The first thing we're doing is we're focusing tremendously on mapping out this evolution. What are the concrete labor market needs going to be in the near future, medium term, long term? So the first aspect has to do with detecting the actual labor market needs, trying to see what will be needed by the workforce, what the labor market will need, and why is this extremely important? This, in my opinion, is extremely important because you cannot craft protective measures unless you know what the problem is, what the challenge is ahead. So the first thing we're doing is we're working really hard on I would say further enhancing a labor market diagnosis mechanism that we have in Greece at the Ministry of Labour, which monitors workforce skills and labor market demands, both real time and also trying to forecast such needs for the near future and long-term future. So that's the first prong. Once you've mapped out the needs, once you've had a more concrete approach on what those needs are, here comes the second part, which I think is extremely important. There's no doubt that every technological revolution comes with tremendous changes to the labor market. Think of when computers were first introduced. They completely changed the labor market as a whole. So I agree that we should not have any fear whatsoever. Yes, jobs will change. That's the word, change. Some jobs will disappear and many other jobs will be created. What's the triggering point here? What's the point that all governments, in my opinion, have to pay tremendous attention to? Reskilling, upskilling, ensuring that as governments, we and the EU as a whole invest sufficient funds and effort so as to protect workers through very active policies for reskilling and upskilling. The Greek government, for the past 5.5 years, has been undertaking a massive reskilling and upskilling program. And of course, it's of prime importance for this reskilling and upskilling to be inclusive and accessible. Having said that, and I will close with this, it is true that this topic is not as, I would say, pressing when one looks at the figures as a whole, comparing Europe to, for instance, the United States. And I say this as part of a larger discussion as to how competitive we are as a whole, as to how competitive we are, how our competition rules allow or not for technology to flourish in Europe. I was looking at recent data, and the data showed that 73% of foundational AI models have been developed in the United States, while the EU accounts only for 6%. So that shows, I think, also that we have time, unless things change drastically, which I hope they do, for Europe to become more competitive. But that being said, AI is not as present yet in our companies. I think that will change in the months and years to come, and I think that the way forward for Europe to stand as a whole and protect its workers in this positive revolution is to stand by their side and to invest heavily in reskilling and upskilling.
Thank you very much indeed to that. I'm going to give the floor now to Ms. Olta Magnani. She's Deputy Minister of Economy, Culture and Innovation of Albania. Ms. Magnani, the floor is yours, please.
What's interesting about Albania is that, and probably most of you in this conference hall don't know, is that Albania is one of the most highly digitalized governments in Europe. We offer more than 95% of our services online, which means that digitalization is really one of our crucial pillars, along with human capital development and skills. These are the two main pillars for our reform agenda within the European Union's growth plan, which is the EU plan for the Western Balkan countries. But one of the biggest challenges right now is how to turn from how to have a smooth transition from a digital government or digital governance to a digital society. I also think that the pace of the job depletion is actually not the same with the pace of the job creation, which means that right now we are not really facing any major disruptions when it comes to major unemployments because of the technology. It's happening so gradually that actually it is leaving us time, the governments and the policymakers, to do the things right and to get adjusted to a smooth transition. So what we are doing currently in Albania is also similar to what Greece is doing. We are focusing very much on reskilling and the upskilling. So basically using this time to get used to the use of the technology and to have as a smooth transition as possible. But before knowing on how to reskill or upskill the population, we're first running skill assessments analysis, including sectorial skills needs analysis in the key sectors of the economy like tourism, ICT. We also refer a lot to the European Skills and Job Surveys in order to understand what are the main skills related to digitalization and the introduction of artificial intelligence, so that we can prepare and we can use the skills intelligence sources in order to reskill and upskill the population. And there are several ways that we're doing this. We are paying a lot of attention to the vocational training centers, particularly the public vocational training centers. We are actually pairing with them in very close partnership also with the private providers in order to reskill and upskill the population. Another good thing I would say that we're doing in terms of policy making is also the digitalization of employment services. By digitalizing the employment services, we're trying to democratize the communication between the job seekers and the employment office counselors. So basically trying to change the culture of not only how to do your job better when it comes when it concerns the context of the information technology, but also how to use the technology to apply for a job in case you are belonging to a vulnerable group or a category that doesn't really have access to technology.
Now it's my great pleasure to give the floor to someone who's joining us online. It's Estela Arana. She's Special Advisor to Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and you are online, and we've been talking about G20, of course. We're talking about the international environment, not just the European Union. So, Estela, your contribution is very welcome.
We need to look at the social and technical aspects of the use of AI in our society. We need to prepare, and I'll be mentioning many of the many topics that require preparation and debate. But for example, we need to focus on perhaps legislative changes so that we can guarantee fundamental rights as we look at the digital transformation, labor law, labor rights. Of course, in our debate, we need to come up with new processes. So the first thing I wanted to raise in this debate, we've already mentioned our society and science and technology. Well, we have the Brazilian Artificial Intelligence Plan, which is being debated in our government. And this is a key issue because this is a debate about how are we going to train people, the skills they need to use AI. And this is a matter of sovereignty. There can't be national or international laws on covering labor rights if we depend on specific companies that sell us their software. We need to be able to exert our sovereignty. So not becoming technologically dependent is an important topic. Now, in this Brazilian plan, where we want to train people with computer skills, data skills, and etc., there's also the topic of training our workers from an employment and educational point of view. We shouldn't simply buy software from large companies. We will be spending $200 million in training, as well as graduate and postgraduate degrees and other training courses. Furthermore, we are creating a framework on AI, general guidelines on it. There is a new law that has been adopted in the Senate and is now being sent to the lower house to be voted on. And an important debate that we're having here is linked to the workplace. Some general rights linked to the use of AI, which are seen as essential for workers, such as transparency, being able to appeal automated decisions, and other related issues. Another point covered by this our new law is generative AI and creative work. So generative AI can help with creative work, but we can't leave this without any safeguards. And when it comes to copyright, also, how can we remunerate those who hold the copyright when these AI models have used their work? This, of course, can be contractual in order to have lower levels of vulnerability. So our new law is offering collective protection. Do you allow or not allow the use of your creative work? A very important part of our new law has to do with platform work. We're talking about fair wages and in making sure that these independent workers have their rights upheld and access to Social Security. Social Security is vital in Brazil. It guarantees the fight against poverty and social exclusion. These workers, of course, need the Social Security when they fall ill, and a lot of these platform companies don't contribute to Social Security. So it's a problem of the sustainability of the social security system, which is bleeding money. And also our workers need to have protection. So we also are proposing a new law in Brazil. And it is one of the key debates that we are currently having in Brazil. So we're here also to learn through this debate what else we could be doing. Thank you.
Esther Lind, General Secretary of the European Trade Union Confederation, ETUC. Esther, a lot of talk about trade unions, social dialogue, just your ideas on and your points of view. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And even though I'm very short on time, I really want to congratulate Oliver and Cinzia, our great colleague, for having the foresight of bringing the human wisdom to the discussion on artificial intelligence. And we really need to act urgently. We need to act urgently for a social contract on AI at global level, and that's why the work that the ILO is doing there is so important. I am a huge supporter, and the ETUC is a huge supporter of every global ethical standard on AI. But we also know that those voluntary standards are hopelessly inadequate to deal with the challenge of the imbalance of the power relationship in the workplace. And that's why the trade unions in Europe are calling for an EU directive to deal and make the AI fair in the world of work in Europe. We do that not because we're negative, but because we're positive, because we want the improvements, but we want them to be fair. I want to give 3 headline demands. So the first of those is that collectivism matters. It matters more than ever for every transition and every change. And this is going to be a massive change. And we need to manage that change. And managing that change means co-governance of the technologies. And that requires workers to be able to join a trade union and for collective bargaining to be seen as a valuable, helpful and useful tool of managing change. The second, then, is that collective bargaining also helps with the other social justice priority, which is the fair distribution of the profits. Because that's one of the things that hasn't come up in the discussion so far today, is who's going to grab all the gains from AI. At the moment, it looks like 4 or 5 people at the very top. In the whole world, 4 or 5 people at the very top. So we need to make sure that there's collective bargaining, so that first distributive justice, which is in pay, is in place, but secondly, that there's taxation. We need to make sure that the benefits that come from AI are also fairly shared. But then thirdly, we also need to make sure to use our moral and human imagination of what might go wrong. How could these tools possibly be used against workers? How can they be dangerous? And we need to use what we already have, which is the precautionary principle. It's one of the most important things we have in Europe. It's in the EU treaty, the precautionary principle, so that we think about things before they go wrong. So I'm going to say I'm just going to say one final thing, and that's the importance of the human in control principle. And the human in control principle is a very basic idea. You can make it as complicated or as simple as you like. But it's very important that humans are never under the control of a machine, that we must always be in control of the machine, whatever it is, whatever it's doing, whatever decisions that it's taking. It must never be the case that you don't have access to a human being as a decision maker, whether that's injustice or whether that's your boss. In all of the decisions, we can never give over the control to AI. It must always, in the final case, the final instance, it must always be a human. Thank you.
We have our last speaker on the panel coming in, Anna Kuratkowicz, Senior Advisor in Social Affairs of Business Europe. We've heard, Anna, from Nikki Karameus that only 13% or so of companies in Europe use AI, and I was wondering if you could kick off a little bit with that.
We, as employers, see, and I'm very happy to hear Esther saying that people need to be in control and need to have influence over AI. We do it. In fact, employers are very, very careful, I would say, in letting AI to the companies, to the ground floor, because indeed there is a mystery and there is plenty opportunities of mistakes that can be made, which we of course don't want because this is not good for workers. That costs us money. So I really want to ensure you that we are very careful. The second point, and thank you for this, in the setting scene, new tools, new processes do not necessarily need new regulations. And I think this is very important because we shouldn't be thinking how to regulate everything, but how to embrace it. And indeed, maybe there will be a need for regulations, but maybe we already have a series of regulations that are useful, and now it's about using them in a smart way. What I want to say in this short contribution is that employers have the hands-on experience with transformative potential of AI at the workplace. We know that it only works if this is beneficial both for workers and employers. And this is possible. We already see it, that, for example, in manufacturing, as it has been mentioned, it can contribute to removing repetitive and labor-intensive tasks, sometimes even strenuous tasks or dangerous tasks from people, freeing them to do more work on strategy, which is more innovative, creative, and brings high value added, but also brings more satisfaction. We also see that, for example, in services, it's possible to use chatbots to manage routine customer inquiries and free people to provide more personalized and complex support. We value very much AI because it makes workplaces more inclusive. It offers adaptive technologies. This is for people with disabilities, and be it mental disabilities, be it physical disabilities, but also for older workers, because it makes continuing work for those who want easier. So just to finish, two concrete examples. What companies do to make sure that AI is deployed in an ethical and responsible way, in the European way. Many companies have ethics boards or AI committees, which basically look at each AI tool that is to be rolled out in a company. This is exactly the bringing human creativity and sensitivity to the discussion. These are very often interdepartmental teams, so HR, legal, policy officers, who look at the tool and see whether AI use in a given case is reasonable, ethical, and responsible. And also, another example from Siemens is that they have an AI committee, which has for each AI product an AI card, which basically screens down different technical but also other features of it before rolling it out. And Works Council were so comfortable and happy about this tool that they put it as for the prize at the Germany-wide competition for the most innovative workplace initiative, which is awarded by work councils. And I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
And I would now like to give the floor to the Director General of the ILO, Mr. Gilbert Houngbo, to please go to the lectern and to give us his keynote address. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Mr. Röpke, President of the European Economic and Social Committee, honorable ministers, representative of employers and workers' organizations, dear representative of the civil societies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Let me start by thanking you for this opportunity to be with you on this afternoon on a subject that is quite very close to ILO mandate and to my own heart. And how do we advance the social justice in the digital era? And I was tempted to add in the also current geopolitical era on this. Technology, digitalization, and artificial intelligence are reshaping the world of work. As we stand on the brink of unparalleled technological advancement, I do think that it's imperative that we navigate this terrain quite thoughtfully. The EU stands at the forefront of addressing this transformation by seeking to balance the development of innovation on one hand with the need to safeguard fundamental rights in the use of AI. Artificial intelligence stands to redefine the work across sectors, occupations, and countries. Already AI-based technologies are automating routine tasks in fields such as customer service, enhancing workers' productivity among knowledge workers, and offering new pathways for skill development and training. Nevertheless, these advancements also bring challenges and risk to social justice that demand our urgent attention. We have to ensure that we shape AI in ways that improve the world of work. This means several actions. Supporting workers who are at risk of job loss, facilitating access by enterprises of all sizes and in all parts of the world of the work to AI technology, to help them to harness productivity benefits, and ensuring that AI integration into the workplace improves working conditions. In particular, ensuring living wages in AI-related jobs is an emerging challenge. While specialized AI jobs are often characterized by high salaries, on the opposite end, on the end of the spectrum, we do know also that some AI-related jobs offer much, much lower pay. We must therefore find mechanisms based on social dialogue and taking into account economic constraints to ensure that every worker in AI-related jobs can earn a wage that provides for a decent standard of living for themselves and their loved ones. It's also important to keep in mind that many of these workers at risk are women who are overrepresented in clerical support occupations that are most at risk of automation. So the gender gap is an important dimension, and that comes out very clearly in ILO research on that matter. Another issue concerns equality of access. AI has enormous potential to increase productivity, but we know that there is a digital divide due to unequal access to internet across the world and gaps in investment in AI between large enterprises and the small enterprises, and between countries at different level of income. So efforts are needed to ensure that inequalities between firms, between countries and people are not heightened by AI. Global partnerships and strategies to support developing countries, including access to digital infrastructure, upskilling, social protection, and social dialogue, are prerequisites to closing this technological gap. In particular, investment in skills, reskilling and upskilling to prepare workers for new occupations should be central to our collective effort. Workers and employers need to be involved in the design and implementation of AI technologies and addressing the challenges of job displacement. Social dialogue is therefore key. Government and social partners should proactively design policies that support orderly, fair, and consultative transitions into the AI-driven future of work, rather than reacting to change as they occur. We must also monitor potential risks to workers' personal data and workers' fundamental rights. For example, practices such as using the AI tools to monitor email correspondence between workers and their representatives are, in our view, in breach of the fundamental right on freedom of association. Such practices should not be allowed. All of these challenges require dialogue and international cooperation. Initiatives like the Global Coalition for Social Justice provide a vital platform to share best practices, foster innovation, and develop strategies that transcend national boundaries, ensuring that AI benefits are distributed equally across all societies. We are very pleased that the European Economic and Social Committee and the European Commission have joined the coalition, and thank you for your leadership in this. We need to ensure that our shared vision leads us to a labor market that is resilient, a labor market that is inclusive, and a labor market that is anchored in the dignity of work for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Director General, for highlighting all the main points on our agenda and focusing on social justice and the need to protect the vulnerable. Thank you very much indeed for your keynote address. Now, this brings us to the end of this panel. Let me turn now to the Portuguese Minister of Labour, Solidarity and Social Security, joining us online. You've heard from Mr. Scarpetta, and I think you may have also heard the previous sessions. We're talking a great deal about protection of vulnerable groups, marginalized group, gender equality, etc. So I was just wondering from your side, how are you leveraging, your government leveraging AI to address such structural inequalities? Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. Good afternoon to you all. I hope that you are all listening, and congratulations for organizing this conference. I would start by saying that this is a very difficult issue. The system is very complex, and it is really not easy to even to grasp the discriminatory situations against all those groups, including gender discrimination. So I don't have much time, and I would choose 2 or 3 main issues where discrimination may arise in a more significant way. I would say first recruitment, because there's a potentially discriminatory situation related to the use of artificial intelligence and algorithms. Also, the second one, workplace and working time, also related to telework, remote work, and the right to disconnect. And the third one, job evaluation. And finally, the personal data protection and fundamental rights protection of workers. I think that in these, at least in these areas, we know that algorithms are not neutral, which is the bias that are already there in society will will be also there in algorithmics. So, for instance, for recruitment, it's very risky, I think, to use the modern tools. You may arise to both direct and indirect discrimination, especially against some groups, for instance, for racial origin or gender or deficiency, like whatever. Also, as regards job evaluation, when you use algorithmics or other artificial intelligence tools, you may, for instance, get very different results. And often discrimination is not direct but indirect. And you know that indirect discrimination is much harder to spot than direct discrimination. So what I think we can really do is to make sure of some basic principles, and some of them had already been said by previous panelists. First, the decisions taken by algorithms cannot lead to discriminatory results, either direct discrimination or indirect discrimination. And secondly, there is a right to damage compensation if discriminatory results arise. And thirdly, there must be a human control over these tools. I think that the European Union has already put in place some rules regarding this, despite it was only related to platform work.
Let me turn now to you, Ms. Karvar. And obviously we've heard all the dangers that lie ahead, but there is this question, isn't there, about how you balance innovation with safeguarding workers' rights, keeping in mind all the different vulnerabilities and fragilities we've identified.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation today. I'm here representing two ministers, French ministers for work. They weren't able to be here in Brussels with you today, but they sent on their greetings. Let me begin by what's changing. As others have said, I think we're still having difficulty evaluating the impact that AI has on the labour market. We have data, but it's inconsistent at times. It's not sufficiently calibrated in terms of the quality of data that's available to us. So it's difficult to know all of the challenges and the details of the challenges that our public policies need to respond to. So access to reliable and comparable data on the impact is something that's very important. The mapping out of jobs, as the Greek minister said, that's something hugely important. And then when it comes to the quality of work as well, anything that comes down to that interface between humans and machines is something we don't know about. So we don't want to have double standards. We need to make sure that those who are at the heart of this work can share with others the data that they have, so that we in public policy can accompany and orient these policies that will go hand in hand with the use and creation of AI. As to French public policy, then, we developed that around three main pillars: to innovate, to deploy and use, and to master all of this. We have some inequalities that we're dealing with, so we're trying to innovate. We have the productivity gap that we've seen, competitiveness gap, for example, that's massive between us and China and the US as well. Then when it comes to use, to avoid a kind of double standard, we need to support our companies so that they can define what their needs are when it comes to uses. The MEDEF, which is the organisation for employers in France, organised, a tour around France to get to know from companies what's going on the ground, gather that information and hear from them. And at the same time, we talked about this idea of being able to regulate, being in charge of all this. We've got the AI Act, which is now in power, to make sure that we can regulate any kind of abuse of the AI, any kind of misuse when it comes to our societies. when it comes to nefarious uses that it might be put to, for example, in work or any kind of profiling, police work, predictive policing, etc., setting up individual profiles, etc. as well. So all of this work is hugely important when it comes to trying to strike that balance between innovation and then public freedoms on the other hand as well. So we've got a couple of deliverables we're talking about there specifically. First and foremost, one that responds to the criticism that we talked about, the fact that we have to have a national kind of observatory, a platform of observatories that could share and exchange information and knowledge based on the work carried out in the ILO, the OECD as well, and all of our global partners for AI, as well as other observatories that are out there, so that they can deal with these topics. And that brings me to the second topic, and that's the rollout of AI within the world of work, which needs to be fair as well. Specific AI can be integrated into work processes to alleviate, repetitive kind of work. That's something that's been said a number of times that can make life easier for us. Thanks to collective bargaining, for example, we can make sure that we have a fair distribution of productivity gains as well. Make sure that life can be made better for workers, and we can do that with collective bargaining. And that brings me back to the question of being able to master the development of AI. We need to be in charge and be master of the risks that are linked to AI as well. So that involves being able to correct algorithmic biases too. Now, I do want to be more positive, I think, on the issue of discrimination and biases, etc., gender inequality, for example, gender discrimination. AI can be used to look through CVs, for example, and if it is not properly trained, it can be discriminative. That's possible. But let's look at it in a different way. If the AI can be correctly trained, then in those cases, it could specifically avoid discrimination. And it could actually correct biases and discrimination in hiring processes when it comes to gender equality. In order to realise the full potential that AI has, we need an international governance framework which is unified, which includes us all in the Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, everybody, everywhere.
Lee Anderson, let me turn to you, Chair of the Employment and Social Affairs Committee of the European Parliament. What is the Employment Committee doing to prevent gender bias and to ensure equal opportunities for women?
Thank you very much, and thank you also for the invitation here. I think if I would start by conveying one main message from the committee, also referring back to the introduction to the previous panel, it would be that for us, the Platform Work Directive absolutely must be the starting point and not the end point. Because if we talk about issues linked to personal data or workers' fundamental rights, it is self-evident that these issues are actualized for workers in all sectors of the labour market where AI is used, not only workers working in the platform economy. So that's why we are working with the issue of AI in the working life. We're doing an own initiative report. We are doing hearings. So we are also trying to feed our input towards the Commission, anticipating and hoping for ambitious legislation in terms of algorithmic management in this mandate. If we talk specifically about gender gaps, I think, of course, one important starting point is the recognition of existing gender bias when we talk about AI. We do know we have several examples since data is collected based on the world we live in now. Of course, it also reflects existing inequalities, existing gender gaps in the societies we see now. So what we need to do, of course, is to make sure that we don't reproduce and recreate these through our AI systems. To do this, of course, we firstly need transparency. And in addition to this, we also need accountability. When we then find out that things have not been done the way they should, or there has been these biases that might have affected people's possibilities to get employed, for example. And then I think we need accountability both for those developing the systems and for the ones implementing them. Another issue I think would be interesting from an EU point of view, from a policy point of view, is that we've heard several examples from colleagues here today about how algorithms can be taught to work for good. So what I think we need to do is to map good practices, actually, good examples from Europe of organizations, companies, and also the public sectors that have managed to take steps to mitigate biases and also to implement fairer algorithmic systems. In the last panel, I think it was Minister Diaz who talked about the need for a positive vision around technology. I agree with her in terms of people really yearning for that kind of messages, but I also think we need concrete examples of positive developments to kind of have a credible positive vision about us actually being able to direct and control how this technology is used. I have two more points I want to make. The first one has to do with reskilling and upskilling. My final point and last point is I also think we should be careful not to talk about problems that are actually just regular examples of precariousness in the labour market as a new technological phenomena. One thing that is needed to address technological development is actually also to just strengthen existing labour rights and labour legislation. One example I have is the one of OpenAI. I also know other companies such as Meta and Google have used subcontracted firms, workers in Kenya, Uganda, India that were paid less than $2 an hour to label content and develop their OpenAI models, ChatGPT, for example, to label sexist, racist, offensive content for the companies to be able to kind of redevelop these AI models. To me, this is a very traditional actual example of subcontracting and labor exploitation.
Let me turn now to Mario Nava, Director-General of Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, DG Employment of the European Commission. So the European Commission, under its new leadership, how is it promoting and supporting the use of AI to address gender inequalities? And you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the invitation to the whole committee. I would start by saying that obviously artificial intelligence harbors both opportunities and challenges to do what you just said. Opportunities are clear. There is an immense potential for quality job. There is an immense potential for taking people, workers, out of an interesting job or making them doing the job better. I mean, Stefano Scarpetta was saying very clearly that AI changes the type of work that people are doing. So you still continue to do the same work, but you do it in a different way. So the potential is there. Draghi report recognizes, there is no doubt. However, it's obvious that there are also challenges in doing that. It was said that the algorithm, they have been written in a way they can be unwritten or written in another way. So it's very true that the algorithm could, if written very well, reduce biases or even introduce some positive biases. It could even improve accessibility. We haven't discussed a lot till now here, but I think accessibility is one of those things where AI clearly has a great potential for that. However, it's also very clear that if it is not managed well, and if the AI, let's say, is just let go, then it has a risk, or it could have a risk, to exacerbate what is today existing inequalities. We need to start from the Platform Work Directive. I think that is a very good point. We need to start from the Platform Work Directive because it gives rules for the very first time, I believe, to ensure transparency, fairness, accountability in algorithmic management. So the Platform Work Directive somehow helps in the direction that we want to go. And then, of course, AI may help us to do a quantum leap in the upskilling and reskilling of the workers. We all know that most of our hopes in maintaining a good competitiveness and productivity level are in the quality of the workers. You will hear a lot about the Union of Skills in the next few months. The Commission is most likely will issue it at the beginning of March. Within the Union of Skills, AI will be an internal part. We cannot imagine in the modern world to have a good creation of skills, a good upskilling of skills, a good circulation of skills.
Let me turn now to Heather Roy. Heather, you are president of the Social Platform, and obviously my question to you has to do with civil society organizations and what role they can play in bringing some sanity and direction and good governance to our labor market and the AI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure about sanity. I'm hoping that everybody on the panel might have some sanity. But indeed, I would maybe like to focus on 3 points and then maybe a question to everybody at the end. We've heard a lot about bias today, and indeed, questions around bias are not new. AI is only replicating the biases that already exist in society. And with particular reflection on gender equality, I mean, gender inequality in data is not new. It is been around for years, and we're perhaps only been recognising it in the last few years. There was a study, though, when it comes to AI carried out by one of the research institutes related to Berkeley in the US, and they did an analysis of 133 AI systems and found that 44% of them had a gender bias, and that 25% of them had both a gender and racial bias. So we're not just talking about gender bias here, we're talking about the intersectionality of multiple bias because of the data we have. And we also have to remember that we live in a data lag. So data we have is usually from at least a year or 2 years ago. There has been huge gains when it comes to accessibility and the use of AI. And often algorithms do not take into account, let's say, differently abled persons, different ethnic groups. When it comes to making an analysis for the labour market, it often it's looking for a standard, not necessarily something that fits outside that. The same goes with generative AI. There's an example from UN Women of somebody who asked generative AI to create something about doctors and nurses. Can you guess what gender the doctor was and what gender the nurse was? You asked generative AI a perfect family. Now, apart from the 5 fingers that at least 2 of the people in the picture will have, you're normally going to see a white family. So we have a lot still to work on in looking at bias, at looking at not just gender, but under other intersectionality biases. And that also comes down to my second point, which is ownership and transparency of data and the governance around it. Again, a traditional labour market problem. Who is involved in decision making? And we strongly support what's been said by the ETUC, and we listen also to colleagues in Business Europe about the need for this to be a dialogue, that we're talking about another tool that we use in our workplaces and what's the best way to use it. Then the third point I want to make, and perhaps be more forceful on, is the human element. It's not that AI, which I think was just said earlier, can make jobs better. It's that AI enables us to do jobs differently. It's not about better. Quality jobs is what we want, well paid, good conditions. There will be positives and negatives from it, but let's have our ethical code in place now.
Let me now go to Isabel Iglesias. She's member of the Employers Group of the EESC, and of course need your opinion as well. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the floor. It's a pleasure to participate at this important conference, which demonstrates how important the role of the Economic and Social Committee is in organising major debates in our society. artificial intelligence is increasingly cropping up in our organisation's reports, but I also was in the study group organised by Group 2 on pro-worker AI, and it was a great deal of work for all of the groups. We should embrace AI to ensure that our workers, young people, women, are at the same level of skills and opportunities as workers in other parts of the world who are much more advanced in its use. And this brings me to the other point of companies being able to use it. That is an area which we emphasise greatly in Group 1's position. In addition, the EU has powerful instruments such as the AI law. Yesterday, in fact, various articles came into force mentioning expressly the various situations that Mrs. Calvar was talking about, such as predictability and so on. These are situations which can cause a lot of fear in communities which are called upon to use AI, but we already have a regulatory framework which we hope will be able to accompany this increased use of artificial intelligence by European businesses so that we can boost this competitiveness, which is what we of course want. I wouldn't just refer to the Draghi report, but the competitiveness compass published by the Commission last week, which flagged up AI as an opportunity with the objective of have a type of AI which is made in Europe. So we're equipping ourselves with all the instruments to make it possible, and we would call upon the institutions and the Commission that at this in this new time it should focus on accompanying businesses in their attempt to adjust, and particularly SMEs, with all due care, of course, so that anything that could go wrong, as Mrs. Lynch said, this is something that could go wrong, but we hope to work together so that it all goes right, so that it's to the benefit of everyone, and so that we can create a working world and a business world which is strengthened in the next few years.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me now turn to Franca Salis-Madinier. You're Vice President of the Section for Employment, Social Affairs and Citizenship of the Workers' Group of the EESC. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for this high-level initiative that's been taken. I think now is a good time to be talking about this. We have the summit in Paris. Next week, France is organising that AI summit. The ILO will be participating. There are parallel initiatives ongoing in the OECD. And so we're having a lot of discussions and debates, and I think they're all very important. I do want to mention a couple of things regarding the opinion that we adopted last week, which I was rapporteur for. The title was specifically chosen. We're talking about pro-worker AI. That also means that AI is pro-company and pro-citizen as well. It's AI for all, because of course we're all dealing with the same issues. Now, why are companies important? Well, if we deploy and use AI, which is reliable, which has the trust of workers, that means that companies can integrate AI in a better way. Secondly, let's talk about impact. Again and again, I'm told in France about the worries that people have, about the jobs that will be lost. And of course, there is a lot of uncertainty as to the impact that AI will have on jobs, for example. We've heard that everywhere, the OECD, the IMF, the organizations we work with in France, etc. as well. So we need to be careful here, and we also need to be clever. As we've heard, in terms of the G7 and the labour and business, the effects aren't predetermined. The effects of AI aren't yet known. It all comes down to how and why AI is used. Yes, of course, we can use it for productivity gains, but it can also be used to replace humans. At the same time, we can use AI in a way that makes sure we as humans remain in control and that the AI is complementary to what we do. So we have the choice to use it in a certain way. And I think to make sure we do that, social dialogue is absolutely essential. That means that social dialogue will be essential to seeing how work and the labour market will be impacted and what the end of all this will be. Of course, today, social dialogue is quite weak in Europe, throughout the world. And so there's room to improve there. We think that we have the legislation that we need, but it needs to be specified. It needs to be more explicit in terms of what exactly we mean in terms of how data will be processed, for example, in terms of the consent that is given when it comes to how data is processed. We need more explicit legislation. We need to make sure that the legislation can be adapted. I'm not talking about changing it completely. We've got Chapter 3, we've got the rules and regulations, but we need to make sure it's adapted to how it's used today, to make sure that it applies to any kind of companies, Amazon, smaller traditional companies as well. We need to make sure that existing legislation is adapted to the uses today, and I'll leave it there for today, but thank you very much for your attention.
Let me turn now to Giovanni Marcantonio. You're from the Civil Society Organizations Group of the EESC, so please, your 5 minutes.
Thank you. I will continue in Italian, please. Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you for holding this very interesting event. I've been listening with great interest, and you've all said very interesting things. I have very little time, so I will get straight to the point. So when we speak of discrimination that can stem from the application of algorithms, I think that, first of all, there are some elements that we need to look at, which are transparency and how to explain the explainability of the algorithm. And these are very important because we can prevent discrimination of gender or any other kind through the transparency of the processes that are behind the creation of the algorithm and explaining how they were created and how they reached these results. This, of course, has to do with the ethics of algorithms more broadly, but I'd like to stress that when we speak of ethics, and therefore non-discrimination, we can't simply speak about the ethics of algorithms. We have a very important instrument which we can use to construct ethics within the algorithm and to provide data that are non-discriminatory when building the algorithm. So when we speak of non-discrimination within an AI process, we need to make a reference, and especially to the data that is being fed in to the AI as it's created. So when the training data is representative and balanced, we will see a good result, a more efficient result, and there should be no discrimination. And of course, we also need to look at the possible correction of any bias. So we need to be able to intervene into the algorithm and correct any bias that may have arisen. part of the AI Act came into effect, and it's a very important part of it. It's something that deals very closely with bias, because it forbids incorrect data or misleading data being fed into the algorithm. And this leads to preventing discrimination, but also working conditions. Some companies are already applying this when it comes to hiring new workers. So we need to give a legal responsibility to those who use these systems, but also those who provide these systems. And we can do it through monitoring and assessments. If you ask ChatGPT, as an example, if we ask if it's better to hire a man or a woman, so training and education also has to do with the gender education gap, because we know very well that access to STEM training leads to having fewer women than men, and we want to have more women in the STEM field. So by giving representative data, we can also give the possibility to women who are underrepresented of building this algorithm along with men and promote this training field when the algorithm is created. So again, this is something that has to be done now. The AI Act came into effect yesterday, and we are certain then the digital gender gap, it's a social and not only a technological reason for concern for all of us. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to give the floor to Oliver Röpke to wrap up what has been, I think, a very fascinating conversation. Thank you.
And I was delighted to hear in the first panel about several inspiring examples from national governments, how they move forward, initiatives aimed at ensuring that artificial intelligence technologies are implemented in ways that promote decent work and will not put them at risk. And I think if these initiatives are carefully designed with the social partners, I think then this is the correct and the right way forward. We have also heard about the importance of safeguarding social rights and workers' rights in an AI-driven world. It was a consistent focus of today's discussions, and recommendations have emphasized the need for a balanced approach where innovation and ethical considerations go hand in hand. We also explored the challenges that businesses face in balancing innovation with ethical considerations. And this is no small task, to be very clear, especially in competitive markets. But as we have heard today, businesses that embrace responsible AI practices, ensuring that their solutions promote decent work conditions, stand to gain not only in terms of public trust, but also in long-term sustainability. And third, inclusivity. I think inclusivity has also been a central theme. Initiatives promoting greater inclusivity, particularly for women and underrepresented groups, remind us that diversity is not only a matter of fairness, but also a driver of creativity and innovation. So as we look ahead, dear friends, dear colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, our collective challenge is clear: to ensure that AI serves as a tool for progress and not division, for inclusion and not for exclusion, for opportunity and not inequality. This requires action from all of us at European level, but also at a global level. And therefore, I'm so grateful that we have organized this event together with the International Labour Organization. Fair working conditions, robust social protection and equal opportunities must remain at the heart of our efforts to adapt to AI deployment.